Welcome back to Devil's Diary TV. Let the story begin. Picture this: a new neighborhood, a fresh start. Everything seems normal, tranquil even. The sun's rays are glinting off the polished cars in the driveways, the scent of freshly mowed lawns filling the air. The houses, all identical, stand in neat rows, their white picket fences the epitome of suburban charm. And there I was, Jane, the newest addition to this picture-perfect scene. I'd moved from the hustle and bustle of the city, seeking a quieter life. The neighborhood welcomed me with open arms. There were smiles, friendly nods, and invitations to backyard barbecues. One neighbor, in particular, was always around. Let's call him John. He lived next door, a middle-aged man with an easy smile and a penchant for gardening. He'd wave at me every morning, his greeting as regular as the sunrise. Over time, his presence became a part of my daily routine, as familiar as the mailman's arrival or the evening news. But as the weeks rolled into months, I began to notice something peculiar about John. His friendly demeanor, once comforting, started to feel overbearing. There was a certain intensity in his gaze, a persistence in his interactions. It was as if he was always there, always watching. An uneasy feeling began to creep in, a nagging sense of being observed, even within the sanctuary of my own home. I brushed off these feelings initially, attributing them to my overactive imagination. After all, this was the suburbs, a place where the most exciting event was the annual neighborhood barbecue. What could possibly go wrong? But soon the signs became too glaring to ignore. The lingering looks, the constant presence, the feeling of being watched, it was all too real. But I was yet to discover the true extent of the obsession that was brewing right next door. Little did I know there was something far from normal brewing next door. For more horror stories from the Devil's Diary TV, subscribe now. Things start to get strange. I feel watched, observed. But it's just my imagination, right? Every day I would feel a pair of eyes following me, from the moment I stepped out of my house to jog in the early morning mist, to the time I got home from work, weary and longing for solitude. It was a constant, unsettling presence that seemed to hover over me like a dark cloud. I'd see my neighbor, always there, always watching. His eyes, hidden behind thick glasses, were always on me. At first, I dismissed it as the harmless curiosity of a lonely old man. But as days turned into weeks, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. I would catch him out of the corner of my eye, peering at me from behind his living room curtains. His gaze, always intense, always focused, would send a shiver down my spine. I would tell myself, it's just a coincidence, he's not really watching me. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. My heart would pound every time I saw his car parked a little too close to mine. I would feel a chill run down my spine when I noticed his lights still on late at night, long after everyone else had turned in. I started doubting my own sanity, asking myself, am I just being paranoid? But then, there were the gifts, small, seemingly innocent, left at my doorstep. A bunch of wildflowers, a homemade pie, a book that he thought I might like. They seemed like friendly gestures, but they were reminders that he was watching, always watching. I tried to brush it off, to convince myself that I was reading too much into things. But the unease grew, the tension escalated, and my peaceful suburban life was slowly turning into a nightmare. The feeling of being watched, of being a target, was becoming a part of my everyday life. The signs were becoming too glaring to ignore. And then, the discovery. Pictures of me taken from the neighbor's window. The realization dawned upon me like a cold winter morning. In the midst of the mundane, the ordinary, the everyday, a chilling revelation was lurking. I had stumbled upon a series of photographs, snapshots of my life captured from a distance. The images showed me going about my daily routine, unaware of the lens that was pointed my way. The pictures were ordinary, nothing out of the ordinary. A click of me watering the plants, another one of me reading a book by the window, a candid shot of me laughing at a joke while talking on the phone. Yet, the ordinariness was what made it all the more unsettling. The photographs were not just a violation of my privacy. They were a chronicle of my life seen through the eyes of my obsessed neighbor. The pictures were not the only thing that I found. There were notes too. Scribbles about my routines, my likes, my dislikes. It was as if someone was trying to know me, not by talking to me, but by observing me, studying me. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. It was not just about the photographs. It was about the intent behind them. A feeling of dread washed over me. The friendly neighborhood, the peaceful life, the sense of security, all of it seemed like a distant dream. I was living next door to a stalker, someone who was watching my every move, documenting my life. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, my hands shaking as I held the photographs. I could feel the walls of my house closing in on me. My safe haven no longer felt safe. I was being watched, followed, studied. I was not just a neighbor anymore, I was an obsession. My sense of security was about to crumble. The realization was chilling, the implications horrifying. The discovery had turned my world upside down. My life as I knew it was about to change. The nightmare was only beginning. Opening. I confront the neighbor, hoping for a misunderstanding. But what I find is far more chilling. The day had come when I finally decided to face this unsettling situation head-on. A confrontation was unavoidable. I had to know the truth, no matter how disturbing it might be. I knocked on my neighbor's door, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. The door creaked open, an eerie silence hanging thick in the air. I gulped, summoning every ounce of courage I had, and stepped inside. As I ventured further into the house, I stumbled upon a room that seemed to be dedicated to me. It was a chilling sight, a shrine of my life. Photos of me plastered on the walls, items that belonged to me, meticulously gathered and displayed like precious artifacts. The realization hit me like a punch in the gut. This was no misunderstanding. This was obsession in its rawest form. My neighbor had been watching me, cataloging my life without my knowledge. It was a stark invasion of my privacy, a violation of my personal space. I confronted my neighbor, demanding an explanation. The response was a chilling monologue of twisted justifications. He spoke of an imagined connection, a fabricated bond that existed only in his mind. The delusion was so strong, so deeply ingrained, it sent chills down my spine. Walking away from that confrontation, I felt a cold dread settle in my bones. This was more than a creepy neighbor. This was a stalker, an obsessed individual who had invaded my life, turning my peaceful existence into a living nightmare. The confrontation was a turning point, a jolt of reality that pushed me into action. I knew I had to escape, to get as far away as possible from this obsessed stalker. Closing, a twisted explanation that sent shivers down my spine. Trapped in a nightmare, I plot my escape. The realization that I'm living next to someone whose obsession with me is escalating to dangerous levels. It's like a cold wave washing over me. Fear becomes my constant companion, a shadow that follows me even in the brightest daylight. My once beloved home morphs into a prison. The walls that once offered comfort and warmth now seem to close in on me, a constant reminder of the eyes that are always watching. The neighbor's obsession, it's like a vice tightening around me, making it harder to breathe with each passing day. I find myself constantly looking over my shoulder, the fear of being watched ever present. My nights are filled with nightmares, my own subconscious echoing the reality of my waking hours. I'm trapped in a cycle of fear and paranoia, and I know I need to break free. So I start to plan to escape the terror that has been thrust upon me. I find myself poring over maps, researching new neighborhoods, all with one goal in mind: to get as far away from the nightmare next door as possible. Each action, each decision is fueled by the desperate need to reclaim my life, to take back my sense of safety and security. But with each step I take to distance myself, the neighbor's fixation only seems to grow. Each attempt to escape is met with increased intensity, a dangerous game of cat and mouse. It's like the closer I get to freedom, the tighter the obsession grips me. It's a living nightmare, a horrific reality that I never thought I'd have to face. But I know I have to keep going, to keep fighting. Because the alternative, to remain trapped in this cycle of fear and obsession, is a fate far worse than anything I could imagine. So I press on, fueled by the hope of a life free from the terror of my obsessed neighbor. The living nightmare intensified. I needed a way out. Even after relocating, the haunting doesn't stop. The fear of being watched lingers. The echoes of my stalker nightmare refused to fade away, even as I tried to rebuild my life far from the shadow of my obsessed neighbor. The terror of being constantly watched, of having my privacy invaded so maliciously, had seeped into my bones, leaving a chilling residue that was hard to shake off. Every unfamiliar face on the street, every unexpected knock on the door, every unattended item in my yard seemed to whisper a sinister message. "You're not safe." The paranoia was overwhelming, clouding my judgment and tainting the simplest joys of life with dread. But it wasn't just the constant fear that gnawed at me. It was the loss of trust. Trust in the comforting illusion of safety within my own home. Trust in the benign smiles of neighbors. Trust in the unspoken social contract that respects personal boundaries. The cloak of innocence had been ripped off, unveiling a disturbing reality I had never imagined. And then there were the nightmares, the sleepless nights, the flashbacks that would strike like lightning, leaving me breathless and shaken. The haunting image of the photographs, the shrine of obsession, the confrontation, they all replayed in my mind like a broken record, refusing to be silenced. Yet, in the midst of this turmoil, I discovered a strength I never knew I possessed, a resilience that allowed me to face my fears, to reclaim my life from the clutches of my stalker nightmare. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick, but every step I took, every day I survived, was a victory. I learned to be vigilant without being paranoid, to trust without being naive, to value my privacy without isolating myself. I learned to draw boundaries, to assert my right to safety, and to stand up against any violation of my personal space. This haunting aftermath, this lingering shadow of my stalker nightmare, has been a journey of self-discovery, of transformation. It has changed me, shaped me, made me who I am today. And while I would never wish such a terrifying experience on anyone, I cannot deny the profound impact it has had on my life. A story that changed my perspective on privacy and safety forever. And there you have it. Obsessed Neighbor, unveiling my stalker nightmare. A chilling journey into the darkness that can lurk even in the most unsuspecting places. A tale that forces us to question how well we truly know those around us. And a stark reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones hiding in plain sight. If you appreciate the realness, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell.